I'm just looking at an interview with Esther Morgan, looking ahead to the match and saying how special it will be to be playing in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. How big an occasion is this for the team and for the club?
Yeah, it's a really big occasion. Obviously, it's a fantastic stadium. You know, in my opinion, it's the best in the world, and I think it's revolutionised a lot of thought processes around, you know, sport in such an amazing arena. And I think for the players to have the opportunity to do that in North London derby is obviously really exciting. So I think for a player like Esther in particular, you know, she's a young player that's coming through this year that's been playing really well, and this is her first opportunity to really do a game like that. So I think for everyone, it's a massive plus and something that we're obviously really grateful for the club to be supporting. And obviously it shows a lot about what the club's doing in terms of investing in us as a women's team.
Just in terms of the game itself being played at the stadium, can the venue have an effect on the outcome, do you think?
Yeah, you know what, yeah, I think sometimes it can be an occasion that is obviously for the positive, you know, so I think it's an opportunity to play in such a nice area. I think it'd be even better if we had the fans in, you know, which I think we've said, all the club managers have said the same thing, players are really investing in getting the fans back in the stadium, so that side of it's a bit of a shame, to be honest, but yeah, I think, you know, it's definitely something that people thrive in for sure.
Arsenal are established for a good many years now. Can Tottenham start to close that gap? And are you closing that gap, do you think, in terms of that North London rivalry and just in general in the WSL?
I think there's obviously, you know, it's a new starting point for Tottenham. We're quite a young club really in the whole scheme of things, and the intent is to obviously close that gap over a period of time, but we also have to be realistic in the fact that Arsenal have been established for an awful long time, and there's a significant difference, you know, in terms of where we are compared to them at this moment in time, but we are trying to close that gap, and that's obviously something that's on our radar for them and for the other teams above us in the league.
When you go into a game like this, where Arsenal have been in terrific form and you've struggled for wins recently, how do you approach it? Is it about containment? Do you go toe to toe with them? How do you go about this?
I think for us it's about approaching every game with an intent to get points out of the game, you know, so that's kind of where we've got to go with each game for the remainder of the season. So whether it's in the stadium or it's, you know, our regular home ground, we've just got to approach it in the same way to try and get points out of the game. That's our biggest focus right now.
Obviously your focus is on what you can achieve, but just looking at your fixtures, you've got Arsenal coming up, and then after that you've got Manchester City, Manchester United, you've got Chelsea. You can have a real impact on how this season finishes up right at the top of the table. You relishing that as a challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think these are the games that you want to play in, so it's a real test for us and where we're at, and I think for us we've got to try and do the things that are right for us first and foremost, but you know, yeah, that might cause a few upsets elsewhere, you never know, but we're just looking to enjoy every game and keep developing on the things that we've been doing, and we've been playing well, you know, so we just want to try and carry that on and finish the season in good form.
And obviously you've probably answered questions on it already, but if I can get your opinion on this, the new deal was announced this week, and just how much of an impact that can have on the women's game, and what I mentioned earlier about trying to close the gap, can that have an influence on the likes of yourselves who are chasing the likes of Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester City? Can this new deal assist in that?
I think the thing about the broadcast deal that's fantastic is that it's going to increase the visibility of the game, and that's something that I've certainly been invested in for over 20 years alongside a lot of other people. So the fact that we're kind of getting to that point right now, we'll just keep developing the game itself, keep attracting attention to the game, and that in itself will, you know, obviously in turn have an impact on all of us as clubs and the way that the game's going to grow in the future. So yeah, there'll definitely be an impact, and I'm looking forward to that.
And just finally from me, you talk about the visibility of the game. I saw Casey Stoney was quite critical of the fact that the Manchester United game, which has been played at Old Trafford, isn't going to be shown on one of the main platforms. He's still the FA player. And your match won't be shown on one of the main platforms, it'll be on the FA players. Is that a missed trick? You've got these big games in the big stadiums that they're not getting that visibility perhaps?
Yeah, potentially. You know, I wouldn't disagree with that. I think it's an opportunity to kind of promote the game here and now in this season. Obviously, we're looking to do that through that broadcast deal a bit differently next year. But yeah, it probably was a missed opportunity for this year. And I think that each game in its own merit is obviously should be getting the exposure that we need it to get between now and the end of the season. So yeah, I think for us it's about making sure that we take advantage of it ourselves, regardless of what that looks like outwardly, though.
Excellent, thanks a lot. All the best this week.
So you've been at the club now for, I think it's just a little over 4 months. You took over from Karen and Juan Carlos, who'd obviously been at the club, especially Karen, for years. Are you now finding 4 months in that you're kind of really stamping your identity on this squad and this set of players?
Yeah, I think so. I think, over the course of the season, we've looked back through the types of in possession play that we're trying to achieve, and we're increasing the number of chances that we're creating on a week-to-week basis against the top four, as well as against the teams in and around us. We're still getting into really good parts of the pitch with good quality possession, and we just are still trying to get the ball over the line more frequently, to be quite honest. But I'd be a lot more concerned if we weren't creating those chances. So in possession, I think it's evident. We're trying to obviously be as organised and structured as we can, and minimise goals that we are conceding, and definitely that's something that we've improved on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously last time, certainly North London derby I was at between the Arsenal and Spurs women was such an incredible occasion. The crowd record was broken for WSL as well. I mean, what's the balance this time of obviously not having that incredible support that the team had that day, but also maybe for some of the younger players actually maybe lessens the pressure slightly as well? Is there a kind of a strange balance there?
I think, potentially. I think it's an interesting one when you go into that type of environment and you don't do it very often. Whilst it can be perceived as pressure, I think for most of the players, they see that as being a really great opportunity versus it being pressure. And including with the fans, it's an opportunity to sort of showcase what we're about. And that's why I think it's the biggest shame that we don't have the fans in this weekend, to be honest, because that's definitely the way that the players are approaching it, to sort of showcase where we are in a fantastic venue. So I think for us, that's definitely the route that the players are going towards with their mindset.
Just the last one from me. I mean, does it change your preparations on the day at all? And the way you, obviously, it's a slight difference in where you're going, but I mean, does it affect anything else in the build-up?
No, and I'm quite sort of strong on that. I think we should be approaching every game in the same way. Just because it's at a different ground shouldn't change the preparation, because that's something that the players do week in, week out. It's another game. It's a game that we have to prepare for in a professional and appropriate way, and so everything stays the same.
Brilliant, thank you.
Rehanne's obviously worked at Arsenal in the past. Can that experience help you make Spurs get to that higher level, do you think?
You know what? I think I've gained quite a few different experiences with different teams and world-class players in a different sort of context across different teams over the last few years. I think all of it's helped me to sort of develop my own coaching and managerial skills. So I think across the board, it's something that I'm trying to put into practice on a day-to-day basis, really, to try and take advantage of what we want to be able to achieve and where we want to go. So all of those experiences that I've had in my career have sort of helped me move forward. And as with everybody else, I'm still sort of learning on a day-to-day basis as we go. That's just part of the game, is to not stand still.
And you mentioned the stadium. The men's team has got Jose Mourinho and one of the global stars of the game. Alex Morgan obviously played for the women's team earlier this season. Do you think Spurs have got the potential to become, really one of the biggest women's teams in the world?
Absolutely. I think the club's really ambitious, and there's so much work going on behind the scenes to ensure that we get these things right to be able to be one of those top clubs, in upcoming years. And I think, as I said when I came in, it is a journey, and it's definitely a process that we're working really hard towards. And that's going to take a little bit of time. We're talking about teams that have been established for a significant amount of time, so naturally there's a little bit of a gap at the moment, and that's okay. But, ultimately that's the direction of travel that we want to go in.
Cool. And just lastly, you could go a big way to sort of clawing that gap back by beating Arsenal for the first time. It'd be quite a historic moment if you could do that.
I think it's something that we're striving towards, and ultimately it'll help us to keep moving up the table, which is ultimately the goal. Whether it be Arsenal this week or someone else next week or the week after that, we have to start competing and closing the gap on those top four to be able to progress in the direction that we want to go in.
Cool, thank you.